Dr. Michele and I are pumped about this because we live in a toxic world. How many
Ouch.
know that? Don't look at your neighbor and say it's toxic because of you. Don't do that. Not a good thing. We're going to go over tonight a lot of cool stuff, so I want you to really hang on. It's a lot of power-packed stuff. And with that said, we got to say hi to the online audience first. So on the count of three, you guys say hello. 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
Very good. We're glad you guys are here as well. So we're going to dive right in. Are you guys ready? Yes. All right.
Ready. Just like being in class, we always have to cover objectives. And we just really want to bring home the point tonight of what a toxic world we live in. And by the end of the night, not only are we going to define it, but you guys will be able to tell other people what a toxicant is and how our exposure to toxicants is actually increasing. We want to evaluate the health consequences of these toxins and the exposure to these persistent organic pollutants and analyze the detoxification process or understand how biotransformation actually takes place and how we can actually optimize it by going through the process of detoxification and what it takes to actually improve it by implementing a foundational and effective plan.
So tonight, before we begin, we put this thought to ponder up here, and I think it's a good thought. A lot of people come to us and they say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. You get it. The point being, we have to reach a place where the pain of the change, right, or the pain of where we are is greater than the pain of change, or we won't change. Do you guys agree with that? And really, we ask you tonight to consider this pain of where we are and elevate it to the point of where it might be in a sudden shift, because we're living in a world where the toxic buildup or the toxic load, as we talk about, is so deep and so heavy that we're getting sicker faster without realizing it. And I'm going to say that one more time because I want you to catch this. We're getting sicker faster without realizing it. And that is a dangerous thing, because it's like we were talking earlier today about this idea of what a toxic world looks like. It's like living in a house where the sewer backs up. You live there so long that you don't know the smell anymore, but everybody else walks in and like, wow. So that's exactly what toxicity looks like in our body. We've gotten so used to it, it's became normal. But oh, is it far from normal.
So toxins, they're more than just in and out unnatural molecules, right? We're exposed to the environmental toxins every single day, just with the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the food that we eat. You know, each exposure is not just only individual, it's also synergistic in your own body. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's body manages these things different, and everybody's body can become dysfunctional from this chronic persistent organic pollutant load differently, and different individuals are susceptible differently based on what your genetic makeup is and how those things kind of stack up really over through time. And we'll go through a few of the genetic pieces later in tonight's presentation and kind of talk about what those are. So you'll kind of understand whether or not you have a higher susceptibility to these toxins that are coming in, and whether or not your internal environment, your own genetic makeup, can actually handle these toxins from the inside out. And then we'll kind of explain how lifestyle, nutrition, diet, exercise, and even natural nutraceutical supplementation may actually be able to help you detoxify to prevent chronic sickness and disease, and even restore your health. So here are some not so fun facts. You know, since World War II, over 85,000 synthetic chemicals have been registered with the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency.
Protection Agency.
Interesting thought, right? So each year, an estimated 2,000 new chemicals are introduced for use in everyday products. You know, those are your healthcare products, what you put on your skin, what you wash your hair with, drops that you put in your eyes, polish that you paint on your nails. It's in prescription drugs, the binders and fillers and things that are in drugs, and household cleaners, pesticides, things we spray on plants to debug them, on the lawn, our lawn products, lawn care things, items. In fact, roughly 3,000 synthetic chemicals are manufactured in high production volume. That's more than 1 billion pounds of chemicals that are imported and produced in the U.S. every year. Doesn't that make your mind a little numb? Just those numbers? So a point which bears question is, why is any amount of persistent organic pollutant load acceptable? And how is each one of us supposed to handle this persistent organic pollutant load?
So probably a good place to begin. We kind of made jest of this, a real and widespread problem. How many have used the weed killer Roundup before? How many have some in your garage right now? Okay, this is kind of a pet peeve of ours, and it's really incredible because not only do we use Roundup on genetically modified seed, hint, hint, problem number one, but Roundup contains a constituent called glyphosate. Glyphosate is contributing heavily to our disease epidemic around the world. You say, well, what does that mean? It's not just a U.S. issue. The question becomes, why are we seeing weed killers in the bodies of other people who have never been exposed to Roundup? Does that make you wonder why that is? It's because they've eaten the food that contains the Roundup in it. America's done a really good job of exporting disease. And I say that intentionally. In our ability to export goods and services to people, we have kind of messed up in a couple of things. We've exported some items that contain poison. And the poison being, I want you to look at these little urine samples. I know you probably can't read all the slide, but basically it's giving a percentage of people that have glyphosate in their urine. And it's percentages of people all around the world. We didn't even include the U.S. here. Imagine that. Now, why is that important? Because as the rates of glyphosate, which is in the Roundup, I'm using those terms interchangeably, has increased, our incidences of celiac disease, how many have heard of that before, gluten intolerance, and our instance of gut dysfunction that has arisen in death have risen at almost the same rate. All of our seeds to the point of 95% plus now in the area of grains, corn, and soy, all of those products, everyone say all. All those products are sprayed with Roundup. Now, keep in mind, not only are they genetically modified seed to avoid the effects of Roundup, but they are sprayed with Roundup, which contains glyphosate, which is a known carcinogen. Our cancer rate has been flatlined for 40 years. What I mean by that is the same percentage of people were dying 40 years ago from cancer as they are today. Does that make anyone here besides us scratch your head and say, what's the deal? Because we've got to think about this from an honest standpoint. We know glyphosate not only is a known carcinogen, but at the same time it mimics something in our brain called glycine. It damages DNA. So people, in a nutshell, that are going through problems psychologically, how many know we see psychological meltdowns probably more today than ever before? Do we understand that they are not snacking on salads? They are not drowning their sorrows in salads. They are not drowning their sorrows in some blueberries. They are going to, and I know we're online, but I don't care, Taco Bell or something like that, and eating some chemically produced mush. They're eating that stuff, and it's causing people to get toxic and sick in the brain. Could it be that some of our food is causing people to do crazy things? I would say probably yes. In addition to this, get this. How many have heard of autism spectrum disorder? Yes? Yeah. All right, very good. Now, 40 years ago, it was 1 in 40,000. Today, it's 1 in 40. By the year 2030, 1 in 2. Or 2050, I should say. I misspoke on that. 2050, 1 in 2. The bottom line is this. We are trending in the wrong direction towards disease trends. We are getting sicker faster, longer, and it goes back to this concept of toxins in food. We do believe that our environment is causing us to be sick. We're going to do our best to build that case tonight, and we're going to do our best to teach everyone listening here tonight and online how to fix it once and for all, because you got to be aware of it, you got to know what it is, you got to know what to do, right? So we're going to teach you all those things tonight.
Is anybody scratching their heads yet? If not, this will make you think. Mount Sinai, the School of Mount Sinai Medicine in New York, they did a study on volunteers who volunteered to give their blood and their urine, and they were tested for
Wait a minute. A volunteer who volunteered.
Volunteers.
Just a thought. I like to make jokes because it breaks the monotony.
Makes
And
you
it
think.
also just destroyed my wife's continuity there.
He
so
likes
I'm
to do that
sorry.
too.
You're just lucky I don't have the fat blob here tonight that I typically have.
We'll pull that out later.
Yeah.
So they tested him for 167 different chemicals in blood and urine. And the average amount of carcinogens was 53 per person. 53 cancer-causing agents per person out of that 167 chemicals. And none of these individuals worked for or lived near the university. So persistent organic pollutant load is persistent and it's very real. So it makes us think, are these low levels of toxicants where they say it's too low for it to be a toxin? Nanograms or picograms per mil, is that really significant? Why does a little go so far? Are these really low levels? Are they really acceptable? So we really have to start to think about detoxification pathways and cellular health. If your constitution is genetically or inherently weak, meaning the framework or body, the skin sac that you live in, if it's weak or you don't have any reserve and we're being bombarded with all these persistent organic pollutant loads, then what? So the dose may really be more significant than we think. It's an interesting question regarding what are acceptable levels. That little pink packet, that little blue packet, those are all acceptable levels. Are these really low threshold levels below which there is an adverse side effect, or is it building a persistent organic pollutant load inside your system that can overwhelm your detoxification or biotransformation systems? Are we looking at it from the proper lens? Letting somebody set a standard and we just never think about it. It's not thought to be toxic. Possibly we should look at the load that's created from all of these sources together and start looking at whether or not we might be toxic.
So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. I like that saying, like where the rubber meets the road. If someone wants to get them a chair, if they can, one of those comfortable chairs. Okay. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable tonight. I know we've got a full house. So we all know we're different. Everyone's different, right? So look at your neighbor and say, "I'm different from you." Yes, you are. Okay. So it's our assertion and belief that our uniqueness must be considered, and we need to reevaluate this idea of toxic load because we know that all of us do not sort of break down these toxins the same. That being said, as Dr. Michele was talking about acceptable toxic loads, we can't really say that because we're all different, because there's no consistency there, right? Everyone kind of gets that idea. Now, with that said, we all know that we have different stressors in life or life occurrences. Those become toxic loads too. They become pieces on top of this mountain of things that we have to deal with. So all that said, these stressors of life are additive.
So do we really need to view things retrospectively? I'm going to read this because it's very, very interesting thought to ponder. What typically will happen is a smart chemist boy, they'll develop a new product. The product is seen as useful. It's got useful properties, so it hits the market. It's disseminated through our consumer goods just rapidly, word of mouth, marketing, whatever the case may be. And it's popular. But typically, 10, 15, 20 years later, scientists begin to realize that this chemical is really quite toxic.
So we're going to dive into some individual toxins real quick. And I started off with this in DDT. I think that little song there is probably a catchy jingle. DDT is good for me. Really? It's not really good. It was a synthetic compound used as insecticides. I say was because it has now been banned for the most part of our country. It tends to persist in the environment, and of course it's poisonous to not only humans, but animals if absorbed in the skin or swallowed. Hint, hint, number one. Additionally, it's stored in fatty tissues. So, like a lot of other toxins, which we'll talk about later tonight, they're stored in fatty tissues, and hopefully, if the fat breaks down and releases that, it's excreted and into the toilet over the course of time.
Excreted where?
Into the toilet, right through the urine or the feces. We got to be honest, we're adults, right? We mention this because of this. If it was toxic when it started and poisonous in the first place, then why was it ever allowed? Makes you question the sanity of the environmental, quote, protection, end quote, agency.
So we're thinking now, it's starting to come to us. We're thinking, where did it all go wrong? Has anybody heard of bisphenol A, BPA? BPA in health. What about BPA, right? It's a commercial plasticizer. It's in all your bottles. We get BPA-free bottles, by the way. You have to look for it, however. Canned goods, cash register receipts. Yes. Think about the Tupperwares, the things that we put our foods in. BPA is readily absorbed through the gut, the oral mucosa, and the skin. Plasticizers in makeup containers. This plasticizer absorbs even quicker when it's heated. Microwaves, sitting out in the heat in hot water bottles, in lunch pails in the heat, readily absorbed when we take it into our precious skin bag. Interestingly enough, its most notable effect is that this plasticizer is an endocrine disruptor, meaning that it throws all of your endocrine hormones for a tailspin. Thyroid, adrenal, female and male sex hormones. The internal metabolism kind of gets spun upside down, and we're thinking that we have a hormone imbalance. We think we have a thyroid imbalance. We think we have an adrenal problem, but we haven't ever really thought about, could we be toxic? In fact, the obesity link, we have to think about BPA. Especially when we look at our young people today, obesity is becoming more and more prevalent. Of course, yes, there's more and more sugar, but could it be BPA? In fact, in several studies, a multitude of studies, in this specific study, urinary BPA concentrations were significantly elevated and associated with obesity in adolescents. So could it be BPA? Could BPA be a cause of our cancer flatline?
Now, contrary to what some believe, this is not the rock band Who. This is the World Health Organization. I know there's been much confusion on which one is which recently, but you can tell my sarcasm sometimes. Few know that even the World Health Organization recognizes that we need to reduce the exposure to toxins. As a matter of fact, in October 2015, few know this, and I'm throwing this in as a side note tonight, the World Health Organization came flat out and stated that all processed meats was carcinogenic. How many saw that? But yet we're still serving those to our children all the time. We think it's cute, we think it's neat, we think it's fast, but it's also deadly. The World Health Organization is saying we need to stop it, reduce it. And to make this happen, it's got to happen from a sort of a grassroots level just like this. We have to first recognize it's a problem. And then we have to make a community effort and assertion that we need to learn and have the boldness and the courage to change. Remember our thought to ponder, change is hard, but it is necessary. Is the pain of where we are great enough to make us change? We know the exposure's on the rise. We know that endocrine-related disorders are on the rise. We know that genetics are not the sole cause. They simply load the gun. The environment is pulling the trigger. Therefore, our encouragement as we go into this a little bit deeper tonight is that we must guard the next generation. We have to. How many have children here tonight? How many have grandchildren? We've got to guard these generations because many times we allow exposure, we allow our kids to be right in the firing line of toxic exposure. Frankly, and I've done this before, I confess, and I've done it many times because of time, because everybody else did, because I just was ignorant. And ignorance is sometimes an excuse because we just don't know. But when we know and do the contrary, That is not ignorance. That's either rebellion or stupidity. And I don't want anybody to be, in rebellion or stupidity, although it's a free country, of course. But the time is now to become very sensitive to what we're doing and begin to make the steps and take the steps necessary to make change, because we are losing a generation. That 1 in 2 autism spectrum prediction by 2050 kind of freaks me out. We can do better. And folks, we are losing a generation if we don't do something now, because it's a subtle change. A subtle change. Remember the septic backed up in the house analogy? A subtle change. And over the time we get so used to it, it becomes normal to us.
So all of these things that we've been talking about are xenobiotics. What does xeno mean? Xenobiotics means simply foreign to life, abnormal to life. Abnormal things that are detected in your body are considered xenobiotics, and they are everywhere.
Yeah, look at this list. This is amazing, and I won't read it to you, but the bottom line is you can see it for yourself. They are everywhere. Does the last one, pharmaceuticals, surprise anyone? Now, I want you to think about this, all these P's. They did this just for catchiness. The P's is equivalent with pollution, right? So think about this small little bits of pollution adding up over time. Do small bits add up to create a mountain? They sure do. It just takes a little bit. Think of a garbage dump. Little bit of trash, a little bit of trash, a little bit of trash. Before we know it, we forgot what was on the bottom. So we must be aware of what is around us and change what we know about and be aware and learn more about what we don't know about.
So what's the exposome? The exposome is it's a collection from all of the sources, every source that reaches your body's internal chemical environment. So let's kind of go through that and see what that means. We're hit from all angles. We're hit from the radiation that's out in the airfield. We're hit from stress. How many people are stressed out? Job stress, financial stress, relational stress. Stress. There's good stress, lots and lots of good stress, but the good and the bad stress can create internal stress.
Stress creates stress creates stress. That stresses me out.
And that creates more stress.
Stress stresses me out. You guys can tweet that anytime you want.
That's a tweet.
Yeah.
Infections. We're all exposed to viral infections, the flu, cold season, allergies, bacterial infections. Those are stressors. Drugs can be stressors, a stress on the environment. They can leach vitamins and minerals and cause, issue on the inside. Diet pollution. We all know about diet pollution, right? The standard American diet. What happens on the internal environment from these xenobiotics? We get inflammation. Pre-existing disease becomes chronic disease, creating more disease. We get lipid peroxidation, oxidative stress of our other biomarkers, and then even a gut flora imbalance. So the exposome collectively is reacting to all of these things all at once. Your body is reacting to all of these disruptors and trying to balance those with what's called the biotransformation or detoxification system.
And we're going to dive right into that pretty quick, but it's important to understand that I was told as a kid, you are what you eat, but it's more than that. It's more than that. That what we're exposed to can become us, or certainly a major part of us. And so what we eat, drink, breathe, touch, get close to, and finally can't eliminate. Everyone say can't eliminate.
Can't eliminate.
All of us are different in our abilities to eliminate certain things, and that's a genetic anomaly that we all have. With that said, as Buzz Lightyear said, toxins are everywhere. They really are. And we have to understand that everywhere simply means everywhere, including in this building. We do the best we can to keep it clean, but through the vents, there's things coming through that vents, and I have no idea what they are. And we work here every day. Do you think we're exposed to toxic stuff? Yes. It's 3 times more polluted inside of a building than outside. That's why fresh air is so tremendous. That's why healing becomes more available when we're outside. Think about that.
Fresh air. So that persistent organic pollutant load, it's the sum of all of its parts. That becomes the total toxic load that results from your total toxic exposure. So we've got to start to think about the totality of the exposure. Its effect on you is going to be how well your body is able to transform, detoxify, or biotransform it and eliminate it. Eliminate it as waste. And that process is called biotransformation or detoxification. They're interchangeable. It's an interchangeable term. So start thinking about how does your body biotransform or detoxify all of these things that we've talked about, because nobody's dead yet, into compounds that it can excrete. Well, it takes a lot of energy. Your little mitochondria inside your cells have to have high efficiency currency, which is the nutrients that are needed to drive this thing forward, to drive detoxification forward. So it's highly nutrient dependent. If you're not getting the nutrition that you need every day, you may be missing a step into biotransforming things into non-toxic compounds that can be eliminated. It's very inter-individual. The lady in the front of the room detoxifies differently than the gentleman in the back of the room. Each individual's system is genetically different. The constitution is different. And the exposome has been exposed in different ways. Not everybody's had the same infections, the same drugs, the same external exposure, the same work environments, and their genetic systems are different. And we know that that persistent organic pollutant load is additive on a specific genetic system. And we know that we have to have nutrition to drive that detoxification system forward. So ATP, the energy, needs the currency, the nutrition, the nutrients that are specific for the phases of metabolism, phase 1, phase 2, and so forth, to drive those pathways forward to eliminate the toxic waste that comes into your body to get it out safely from your system.
So we're going to dive right into the biotransformation, also known as detoxification process. Remember, Dr. Michele said detoxification, biotransformation are one and the same. A better word is biotransformation, because what we're doing, we're going to go through 2 steps. It's probably a little more complex, but we're going to simplify it. So phase 1 has been referred to or called the oxidation or reduction or hydrolysis step. It takes this bioactive molecule and it tries to sort of begin to prepare it for transformation for elimination. Most toxins that come in are known to be lipophilic, meaning they are fat soluble, as opposed to hydrophilic, which is water soluble. If they're water soluble, it makes sense they go out quicker. But we have a problem. If most of them are lipophilic, they have to be transformed to a water soluble to be excreted. Now, most lipophilic compounds are phobic to elimination. Makes sense, right? So they've got to be transformed. So how does that process work? We have this compound that comes in. It's called a parent compound. Let's call it our molecule. It's really aggravated and bent on destruction. It enters into our body through either food, water, air, or something we don't know about. It gets through our skin, perhaps. It has to be prepared for phase 2, which is the water-soluble conjugation state where it can be eliminated. If it's not water-soluble, it cannot be eliminated. It remains lipophilic and stays in our body. Make sense? So phase 1 is through some enzymes that everybody has. It's called CYP or cytochrome 450 enzymes, and we're all different in that genetically. So some of us might break down the caffeine toxin a little faster than others. Some of you would understand this simple analogy we give of drinking a cup of coffee at 9:30 at night and someone goes right out at 10 o'clock, as opposed to someone who drinks a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon and is awake at 2 in the morning. They have a different variation of the cytochrome P450 enzyme that breaks down or reduces that caffeine. Everybody has these different variations. And then phase 2 is all about grabbing internally produced compound and like sacrificing its life to carry this guy out. Like a bouncer goes to a guy in a bar and says, you're causing a problem. I'm going to grab you by the short hairs of your neck and I'm going to drag you outside. Except this time the bouncer doesn't come back. Okay?
So
I told you the body's a unique sacrificial engine.
yeah. So in phase 1, it creates those highly reactive molecules, right? You're rusting at a really rapid rate, and it's very nutrient dependent. In fact, the nutrients that phase 1 needs are very specifically B2, B3, B6, B12, folic acid, glutathione, and flavonoids. How many of you out there know that you get those every single day? Right? So what's happening as things come into your system? Yeah. Are they getting stuck? Are they getting recirculated? Are they getting transformed into that phase 2? Phase 2 is dependent upon amino acids like methionine and cysteine. It's also dependent on a bunch of B vitamins, B5. Again, you see B12 up there, folic acid, glutamine, taurine, glycine, glutathione, the body's most potent antioxidant. How many hands go up saying, I get those every single day? Some of you have probably never heard of a few of those. So how's your biotransformation detoxification system working? Just a thought. So an imbalanced biotransformation system can be deadly. Those highly reactive molecules get set in motion, and oftentimes they stay in motion. And the end product of that is damage to our DNA, damage to our RNA, damage to our proteins, or our cells. Our skin cells, eye cells, hair cells, liver cells, kidney cells become dysmorphic, mutilated, cancer type, cancer of nature, not normal, abnormal, dysfunctional cells.
So we're going to look at this from a little more of a kind of an organ standpoint. You can kind of follow the diagram. You see the compound phase 1 kind of at the top coming in, and then it's conjugated in phase 2, and then eventually it gets all the way through the liver, through the GI tract, and one way or another it gets in the toilet, either through the urine or through the bile flow, right? Everything's working good. You see the nice dark lines going into the toilet. Flushing the toilet and toxins is good. Now, as long as everything works like that, everything is fine. But, and toxins are obviously released not just in the toilet, they can also come out through the skin, through sweating. We all know that. The skin's the largest organ. Now, what if the circulating load becomes too much? Less make it through the process and more potentially get recirculated back into the system, activating these oxidative reactivity cells and pushing them back in the brain. Crazy, huh? Now that's if we get a little bit of an overload. It can get recirculated. Now, watch this. What if the overload gets too deep and begins to block the gallbladder or the bile flow? In other words, it doesn't reach the toilet. So it's stuck in our system, and now they have 2 circulatory paths going back to our brain. How's your brain feeling full of septic waste product? Probably not very good. It can get even worse. The beat goes on. What if we get so much GI inflammation because we've got so much brain inflammation, and all of our toxins, for the most part, start recirculating and going right back into our tissues because they're mostly lipophilic. Remember, they can't be transformed effectively. They get stored there in the tissues and organs. And guess what the brain's made of? Anyone? Fat. So this is why people have toxic brains, right? And so, unfortunately, we see this feed-forward cycle going on where if it gets so bad and we don't clear toxins, the whole system gets gunked up. And as Dr. Michele said, what's the result of an overload of toxins eventually? Cellular damage. This is why people get sick. The cells get so damaged they simply cannot recover. Now, this is interesting. Why are some people more or less susceptible or sensitive to toxins? We've put a lot of different reasons on there. Some people eat more or less of those substances that we don't need to eat, correct? We eat differently. Some of us have genetic differences. Some of us have more stressors. Some of us just have different things going on in our lives. Some of us have the propensity to have higher inflammatory response. Every person is different. Some people have poor elimination. What if someone is chronically constipated? What does that tell us about our ability to detoxify? Would you say that that makes one susceptible to having toxins recirculated? So is chronic constipation normal? No. However, we have many people that come in this clinic and they say, well, that's been like it for years. Well, we still can't feel good like that. Just because it's been that way for years does not mean it's normal. Remember, the septic smell that's backed up in the house has been there for a long time. I use that as an example because we have to really face things as they are. Normal bodily function should be working, and if that's not working, discarding these toxins in the toilet, the toxins are not getting out because there's a level of exposure that we simply cannot get away from. Would you all agree with that? There's an unknown level of toxins out there that are increasing, as Dr. Michele perfectly laid out in our environment. All those that are being produced every year with the belief that these minimal acceptable amounts are okay, only to learn 20 years later in retrospect that they were never okay. So we have to keep history in mind. The EPA has made mistakes before because they underestimate the uniqueness and the individuality of all of us. They really do. Not knocking them, because they're trying to make decisions, but they're making it on a general level as opposed to a specific population, or better yet, a specific person level.
So starting to get to the bottom of this, we've kind of painted a really cool picture. Wasn't that a cool picture of biotransformation and how we can become toxic? Yeah.
I think they believe it. Yeah, I think we've got them convinced.
So now kind of dig into your own history, because your history tells a story, and everybody's very, very unique. In fact, when I was in medical school or residency, if we couldn't come up with the solution to the problem, they would always send us back into the patient's room to get a better history. The history solves the mystery. So continue to dig into the history of your home environment. Is there mold? Is there lead? Is there mercury? Is there, dust mites? I mean, all of those toxins that we talked about, plasticizers, what are you putting on your skin? What's in your shower? What's on the floor? What are you putting on the floors? Your work environment. Take an inventory there. What about your diet? We all know that we have got to eradicate the standard American things that are in the diet that are xenobiotics, that are endocrine disruptors, that tear up our internal environment, our microbiome, our gut microbiome. Are there drugs going in there that are causing a persistent organic pollutant load that may need a nutrient? Some medications pull out nutrients that the biotransformation or detoxification systems depend upon. So it's just worth taking a look. What about other chemical exposures? Do you work with Clorox? Do you work with, pine sols? Do you work with things that might be toxic to your lungs, your airway, your skin, your system? What kind of current symptoms or complaints do you have? Do your joints ache? Are you more fatigued, foggy-headed than you should be? Are you gaining weight abnormally and everything else seems to be normal and fine? In fact, when was the last time that you felt completely and totally well? And then we always look at those genetic SNPs. If we can't get to the bottom of it, then we look into those detoxification SNPs that kind of tell us your unique detoxification system. Is there an insertion or deletion? A deletion that's there that means your detox system may be a little delayed or slowed. Is there something that's there that may say that it's working at 50%? Is there a SNP that needs a special nutrient to help it function better? These can all be evaluated by you looking into your personal history and your medication cabinets, into your genetics and otherwise.
I just thought of something funny with the word diet. I don't know if you guys ever thought of this. This is totally off the cuff, which sometimes I do. But the idea is this. Diet, the word has die in it, so are we dying by it? Just a thought. There's some direct measures of toxins. You guys are mind twisted now, I know. There's some direct measures of toxins. Some people ask, how do I know if I'm toxic? How do I know if I have them? Here's 4 ways that you can certainly tell. Hair analysis, stool analysis, blood testing, oxidative stress testing. Additionally, you can look at genetic testing, as Dr. Michele, this is why we're big on this. Some people have genetic SNPs or variations in the genetic code that make them slower to detoxify and more susceptible to things that can create DNA damage. So very important. There are very many ways to measure. However, I think if we just ask ourselves the right question, look at our own history, I think we probably come up with a really good answer as to are we loaded up on toxins or not.
So nutrition. 85% of your long-term outcome is nutrition. What goes in is vitally important to long-term outcome. The most important medical decision that you make is at the end of your fork curls. Always ask yourself the question, is this toxic or not? Is this good for me or not? Is it going to give me life-giving energy, or is it going to be an expense to my biotransformation system? So nutrition can be the modulator of toxicity and environmental pollutants, those environmental insults. By putting good phytochemicals, phytonutrients, antioxidants on your system, it can actually blanket DNA. So just because you're born with a certain blueprint doesn't mean that that blueprint actually has to express itself. You may have fat mass and obesity genes, ADRB2 genes that say you're going to be overweight and resistant to weight loss, but if we put the right kind of nutrients and nutrition on it, it works like medicine. That is literally the best medicine that we have, is what's at the end of our fork. Can't out-pill a bad diet, can't out-supplement a bad diet, can't out-exercise a bad diet. It's got to be at the end of the fork, and then the rest needs to follow.
And one more. Believe it or not, you can't out-pray a chronically bad diet. Think about that one. Now, biotransformation principles. These are key. These are 7 I want you to really catch, and I'm going to have a little interaction with you. How would we minimize our exposure to toxins? Would you think that looking around our house, looking around our life would be a good way? Right? Yeah. Observing, being honest. How do we ensure adequate hydration? Drink plenty of what? Water. How do we ensure plenty of oxygenation? We breathe, we exercise, we make sure that... How do we ensure we have optimal bowel health and excretion? Magnesium citrate can help. We make sure that we make that happen. Even if we have to take magnesium citrate, we make sure our bowels are going to move. We make sure we take plenty of water to make make the urine flow nice and strong. We enhance our antioxidant reserve. How do we do that? Maybe eat more fruits, perhaps, maybe berries. Antioxidant-rich fruits would be very important. We downregulate inflammation, because we know too much toxicity can elevate inflammation and keep it elevated so much so that it can weaken your immune system and make you sick more often, quicker in life. You get more susceptible to all disease by taking essential fatty acids. Those would be your omega-3s, these essential ones. We want to make sure our omega-3 ratio is intact. If you have not measured your omega-3 ratio, you really should do that. So omega-3 ratio is very, very important. We can assist our biotransformation inside us. That's what the word endogenous means, by really targeting nutrition. And that's exactly what we're doing with this detoxification plan we have planned for all of us for a 14-day period. We want everybody to join us from a community standpoint and learn how to do this from a functional standpoint, but also to help transform lives. Because we must understand that if we can't do something for 14 days, how would we ever do it for life? Would we all agree with that? We have to start somewhere, baby steps. So we're going to talk about that support structure in a moment. Adequate exercise is simply movement. We're supposed to sit less, move more. Sit less, move more.
So it all begins with food. Back to fruits and vegetables. Always getting your fruits and vegetables every single day. Lots and lots of different colors. Your reds, your greens, your blues. They're all very, very important in your nutritional tree. So you want to make sure that your plate is full of lots of different colors. So who should incorporate the detox plan? How about anybody who's tired, fatigued, not thinking properly, brain fog, mental fog? What about autoimmune disease? Don't we have an awful lot of autoimmune disease popping up in America today just out of nowhere? What about the persistent organic pollutant load and destroying the gut microbiome? Anybody with a chronic systemic illness, not just a neurological disorder, but any chronic illness, high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, inflammation. The list goes on. Fibromyalgia, that's another one. Is that really real? What about toxicity? How about anybody that's around fumes, perfumes, chemicals, a chemical environment where they breathe that all day? What about someone with a family history of cancer or a personal history of cancer? Exposed to those chemicals. Anybody whose bowels don't move. Not just everybody, every day, but daily, not just 3 times a week. We should all move our bowels every single day. Any chronic medical condition deserves to incorporate a focused detox. Your liver and kidneys bear a tremendous load. And how many of you ever really thought about what your liver and kidneys really do every day? They're transforming everything that's coming in, making it into a non-toxic compound, and then eliminating it as waste, just magically. Perhaps we all need to think about detox.
And obviously we're going to give you a great detox plan and concept, but this is not it. I want you to kind of look at that. It might be something you want to do at your office space, but it's not it.
Can you guys read that?
Can you guys get that okay? We can save, I'm going to read this to you, we can save the most money by downsizing the unhealthiest workers first. Makes sense, right? Well, the boss says, how do we know who they are? The helpful servant says, we'll close the parking lot that's nearest the building. And therefore, they're going to fall down dead going into the parking lot because they had to walk a little longer. That's not the best plan, but nevertheless, I can see where some of us might want to do that sometimes. Especially you guys that have companies or businesses and you're like, I'm tired of this nonsense, all right? So, with that said, how do we implement the detox process? It's got to be simple. And I'm actually going to do something unique right now. I'm going to show you this thing because it's important to me that you get this. Okay, a detox plan has to be simple. We operate on the KISS principle. Keep it simple, don't silly. I want you to say silly, not stupid. Okay.
Silly.
So I like a nice booklet that looks like this. It's not complicated. The way the plan works is real simple. We have pre-made meals. This is a whole meal. There are recipes for this meal that you can add to the shakes things if you want to, or if you're in a hurry, you can put this in some water, or perhaps unsweetened coconut, almond, or cashew milk and just mix it. It does mix very easy, by the way. But there are other recipes in the book as well for this. So this can be a whole meal, all right? The idea of the plan is to minimize the amount of chewed food in the belly for 14 days. So 2 of these per day, whenever you do those is fine, and then 1 meal off of a gigantic list. Here. This is a big list. I know you can't see it, but there's a lot of foods here. There's like all kinds of protein sources, fat sources, vegetable sources. There's snacks on here. This is not, everyone say not calorie restrictive. This is not a diet. It's not a diet. We get that all the time. Am I going to lose weight? I don't know. You might. But the point is, give your liver and your system a rest to push things out. These packets that come with it, every time you take one of these shake meals, which is how many per day? 2. So if you're a larger guy, say 180 pounds or up, you may want to have 2 of these plus 2 meals because we don't want you to starving. It's not calorie restrictive. You're also going to take a packet of nutrients here. Very important. The nutrients that Dr. Michele mentioned that help push out and grab these toxins that are lipophilic and grabs them and pulls them out like the bouncers in the bar. These are your bouncers. Make sure you take your bouncers, people. They come in with the shakes. I'm getting a little squirrely tonight, I know, but the bottom line is this is super important. People think, well, why am I taking pills? It's not pills. These are nutrients that help push and catch those toxins. I like simple. People ask sometimes, well, what am I having to remove that is toxic? The greatest thing that I see people struggle with the most is going to be this concept of caffeine. So here's what we do with this. We recommend moving to decaf just for 2 weeks. And we're not going to start this officially until next Thursday. Okay? So we have a few days to work on weaning ourselves down from caffeine. So we're going to open the Facebook group for everyone to join us. You'll be sent that link. We're going to get on there and start producing little videos that are live. Just come on there and say, hey, what's going on? You know, the Facebook Live stuff. So we're going to encourage people. How many do Facebook stuff? Okay, so we want to see you on there. It's about support. We're going to go through it too as a staff. Our staff is going through this, and we believe there's power in community. Really believe that. All of us, would we agree, need to do this? Simple. This is one of the most simple detox plans that I know, and there are more complex ones. I get it. This is not designed to cleanse your bowels.
Right.
It might make the bowels loosen. It could, when you change nutrition, make the bowels tighten up. If it tightens up, what are you going to come here and get? What's it called? Magnesium citrate. Very good. So we'll teach you how to dose that. For those of you online, of course, we'll teach you how to dose that as well. But we got to make sure the bowels are becoming more regular because we want the toxins to pass through. Most people do really, really well on this. Really well. And most people have no issues at all. I'm talking none. They feel better with increased energy, better sleep, better rest, less physical soreness, better bowel activity, just better energy and motivation in general after about 2 or 3 days at the very least. And most have no issues. So we work ourselves up to this. It's 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's very important. We should all do this, and we do this 3 to 4 times a year. So you're looking at once every 3 to 4 months. Very, very important. It doesn't mean we live like hell for the rest of the time and say, I want to cleanse myself. That's not the point. The point is, we want to try to live in such a way, understanding that our detox pathways are 24/7, 365, and those need to be optimized, because if they back up, we have problems. We don't want to become brain toxic. Brain is made of what kind of material mostly? Fat. And what are most toxins? Are they fat soluble or water soluble? That's right. So they might stick in the brain. Okay, we don't want that to happen. They'll stick in tissues. We want people, you will lose fat tissue going through this program because it's going to facilitate toxins being released from the fat, which is always pretty good. So the question becomes, will I lose weight? Probably. You will, and it'll be good. But most of the point is you're going to feel better. Going to feel better. So we want everyone to join us. The Detox Kit looks like this. You can see the price. It results in less than $5 per meal. And I want you to catch that because it's important. Less than $5 a meal. Most people go out and spend more than $10 for one meal. So you have 2 meals that are less than they're $5 or less each with all the supplements, and then 1 meal is on you. So you're going to save grocery money, and you're going to improve your liver and detoxification cell health for 2 weeks. We realize that when we start on June 28th, we're well aware of the calendar that's going to cross right into the 4th of July holiday. So here's what we're going to do. In the middle of the detox group, we're going to give you some different foods and ways you can handle that 4th of July holiday on that day that's still going to fit. So we may say, all right, cut down we might do this. We might say, just have 1 shake that day in the morning and stay with these foods for the afternoon, and then right back to it. Take your supplements and move on. So it's a good time to do this through a holiday because we must learn how to cope. And so we think it's ideal before, during, and after. Would you agree? And so very, very important for those of you online, there's the code. It's fmidr.com /Detox Kit. We want you to join us. We've got people from all over the country joining us now. We want you to as well. And certainly we want everyone to join us here online. So with that said, I want to dismiss the online crowd. And Dr. Michele and I want to thank you so much for attending tonight. We've enjoyed it. We love all the interaction we get from you. So with that said, we'll see you later. Everybody's out here is going to say bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll see you guys later.